They said time softens all things, even stone, even memory. But Ellian knew better, because time didn't soften what was buried beneath the ash and bones of his childhood. It only taught him how to carry it more quietly, how to turn pain into something elegant and cold and purposeful. Because when the Red Hawks came to the village of Dryfell, they didn't just conquer it, they erased it with the precision of men who had done this before, who had learned how to wipe out a people, and still sleep well afterward. He had been 12, watching from the high grass with his sister Lyra beside him, both of them too far to be seen, but close enough to hear the thunder of boots, the scream of the forge being turned to flame, the dogs let loose on neighbors who'd taught him how to read, how to fish, how to pray. Then the gunshots came in a rhythm like someone banging nails into his chest, and he saw his mother fall first, trying to run, and his father dragged out by 2 men in uniform who struck him for speaking the old tongue. And then the soldiers torched the house with the red roof, their Red Hawk insignia catching the firelight as they laughed and moved on to the next. Ellian wanted to scream, to run to them, but Lyra held him back, and when they were found hours later, dirt-covered and shaking, she told the soldiers who arrived too late that they had no names, only fear. And after that, the years unraveled like a blood-stained ribbon. Him and Lyra passed from one refugee train to another, one orphanage to one more cruel than the last, until she vanished one night, and no one looked for her. No one but him. And by the time he was 15, he had stopped asking for help and started learning how to take what he needed. First food, then names, then skills, how to disappear in a crowd, how to fight dirty, how to slit a throat through a coat collar and keep walking. He moved through cities like a shadow, slipping through borders, changing identities, until a woman named Soraya found him bleeding behind a brothel in Varast, and instead of turning him in, taught him how to sharpen not just blades but lies, how to weaponize charm and carry poison beneath his smile, how to take revenge not as an act of fury but as an art of patience. And for 7 years he studied under mercenaries, diplomats and spies, rising in a world of secrets while slowly, steadily building a path that would bring him back, not to the ashes of Dryfell, for there was nothing left there, but to the heart of the Empire, where Commander Halvek now sat in luxury behind polished walls and gave speeches about honor and order, his crimes long forgotten or denied. Ellian infiltrated his world not as a soldier or assassin, but as a brilliant young attaché from a fabricated nation, backed by forged letters and an invented past, and over 3 painstaking years, he embedded himself in the circles of power, earning trust, playing the game, even pretending loyalty to the man he swore to destroy, all while gathering files, copying letters, memorizing every movement of the guards, the passwords, the schedule of Halvek's physicians, the contents of his wine cellar, all while keeping a locked box beneath his bed with the only 3 things he still owned from his real life: a broken violin string, a silver coin his sister once gave him, and a photo of his parents half burned, but still showing the red scarf his mother always wore on cold mornings. And when the moment finally came, at the masquerade ball celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Eastern Reclamation, Ellian moved like a waltz, dressed in silver and black, his face hidden by an obsidian mask, offering Halvek a rare vintage, laced with a neurotoxin so subtle it mimicked vertigo, just enough to make the old general stumble, just enough to allow Ellian to lead him down a quiet corridor, through a servant's passage, and into the hidden chamber beneath the palace archives he had prepared over months, where the walls were covered not in weapons but in relics. Names, written on parchment, sketches of the village Halvek destroyed, the names of all the people who vanished under his command, each one written in the language Halvek had once banned, a language Ellian now used as scripture. When the general awoke, bound, sweating, unable to move but fully conscious, Ellian did not begin with torture, because vengeance was not about cruelty. It was about memory, about making the guilty remember what they chose to forget. So he recited the names of every child buried without a coffin, every woman branded a traitor for hiding food, every elder who died clutching stories instead of weapons, and he made Halvek listen, hour after hour, over 2 full days. while the candles burned lower, and the general's mind began to fracture under the weight of history, rewritten in pain. And on the final day, when Halvek, broken and weeping, begged for mercy, for ignorance, for sleep, Elien finally spoke the name he had buried in his own heart for so long. His real name, not the one printed on documents or whispered in courtly circles, but the name his mother gave him. The name that belonged to a boy who once danced in wildflowers and played songs on his sister's lap with spoons. And with that name, he carved the final letter of the old language into Halvek's chest, not out of vengeance, but as a seal, a mark that the truth had been spoken and witnessed. And when he delivered the final stroke of his blade, it was not with anger but with a stillness deeper than any peace he had ever known. He sealed the chamber, left no trace, and walked out into the city where rumors would swirl of the general's sudden disappearance, of whispers in forgotten tongues and ghosts returning to claim debts, and Elien vanished as easily as he had appeared, leaving behind no trail, no legacy, just a truth finally fulfilled. And as he crossed the river at dawn, watching the light hit the water in golden fire, he took out the silver coin, kissed it once, and let it fall into the current. Not as a goodbye, but as an offering, a promise that no memory, no matter how buried, would ever be erased again. But what Elien hadn't expected, what no amount of training, memory, or careful orchestration had prepared him for, was what came after. Because when a man spends his entire life chasing one name, one act, one wound that never closed, and then finally closes it, there is an echo left behind, not silence but something worse, something shapeless and waiting. And for days after Halvek's death, Elien moved through border towns and ruined roads like a ghost in his own body, sleeping in barns or beneath collapsed viaducts, where no one knew who he was or what he had done. And that anonymity, once a shield, now felt like a hole he was sinking into. Because if he wasn't the boy from Dryfell and he wasn't the man who'd just ended a tyrant, then what was left? What name could he even wear now? That revenge had consumed the last of the names that mattered. He headed north, not with a destination, but with a direction. To the old forest, where it was said the resistance had once held camp during the darkest days of the war. A place whispered about by dying men and drunken smugglers. A place untouched by Empire hands because the woods themselves were rumored to resist conquest. And he found it after weeks of silence. A place where trees grew so thick the sunlight came down in slivers, and birdsong returned to him like a language he hadn't heard in years. And it was there, in a clearing overgrown with moss and memory, that he found the shrine. Small, half-rotted, covered in carvings from a language older even than his own. And something in him cracked when he saw it. Something deep and wordless. And he fell to his knees. Not from grief, not from exhaustion, but because it was the first time in his life. He felt no need to watch his back, no weight of performance, no mask or mission, just the earth, the wind, the presence of something untouched by war. And he stayed there for days, rebuilding the shrine with quiet hands, cleaning each stone, carving the names of his family into the base, not for the world to see, but for the woods to remember. And for the first time since his sister disappeared, he wept, not with rage but with release. And when he finally rose again, something inside him had shifted, not healed exactly, but realigned, as if the compass of his soul had found new north. And he decided, not with ceremony or grand vision, but with the simplicity of breath, to live. Not for vengeance, not for ghosts, but for the lives that vengeance had left behind. He began moving from village to village, offering medicine when he had it, shelter when he could build it, stories to the children who were still afraid of soldiers even after the flags had changed. And slowly, he began to hear laughter. Again, not his, not yet, but laughter near him. And that was enough. In one town, an old woman asked his name, and he gave her his real one, Elien. And when she didn't flinch or doubt, just smiled and said it was a strong name. He felt a kind of trembling in his chest he hadn't known since before the fire. Something soft and dangerous. Something like hope. And though he still woke some nights gripping the dagger beneath his pillow, sweating from dreams of fire and rope and screams in the fog, he began to write. Not just names, but songs, letters, memories. Things he thought he had forgotten but were only buried under blood. And one day, in a small mountain town with blue rooftops and wind chimes made of shells, he heard someone humming an old tune. A melody only one person besides him would know. And he followed it down an alley, heart pounding in a way no battle had ever stirred. And there, sitting on a bench beneath a tree, eyes closed, humming to the breeze, was his sister, Lyra. Not a memory, not a ghost, but real, scarred, older, alive. And when she opened her eyes and saw him, neither of them spoke at first because some reunion,